Once a troubled man approached a wise sage seeking guidance on how to control his emotions. The man had been struggling for a long time, overwhelmed by frequent outbursts of anger and frustration. His emotions often got the best of him, causing rifts in his relationships and affecting his overall well-being. He wanted to find a way to live a more peaceful life, free from the storm of emotions that constantly swirled within him. Hearing of the sage's wisdom, he hoped that this journey would lead him to a better understanding of himself and how to achieve emotional control. The sage, known for his calm demeanor and deep insight into the human condition, welcomed the man into his humble dwelling with warmth. His presence was soothing, and the troubled man immediately felt a sense of peace in his company. After offering the man a seat, the sage gave a gentle smile, his eyes filled with understanding, and began telling him a story. "Let me tell you a story," the sage said, his voice steady and filled with wisdom. "Long ago, there was a king who ruled over a mighty and prosperous kingdom. The king had everything one could ask for: wealth, land, and power. Yet despite his success, he was often plagued by anger and frustration. His moods would swing unpredictably, and even the smallest irritations would lead him to lose control, affecting those around him. He was respected and feared, but there was something inside him that remained unsettled." The sage paused for a moment, looking thoughtfully at the man, as if trying to impart the depth of his words. One day, this king decided to embark on a journey to visit a neighboring kingdom. He had heard much about the wisdom of the king who ruled there, and he thought perhaps this king could offer him some guidance on how to manage his temper. The troubled man, intrigued, leaned forward, eager to hear the rest of the tale. The king traveled for many days and finally arrived at the neighboring kingdom. The sage continued. Upon his arrival, he was welcomed with great honor. The neighboring king, known for his wisdom and kindness, invited him to a grand banquet in his honor. There, a feast was prepared with the finest foods, and the two kings enjoyed an evening of conversation and merrymaking. The sage's tone became softer, as if he were reliving the events himself. During the feast, however, something unexpected happened. As the visiting king lifted his spoon to take a sip of his soup, he noticed a small insect floating in the bowl. Disgusted, he immediately dropped his spoon and called for a new bowl. He was irritated by the very thought of eating from a bowl that had been contaminated, even by something so small and insignificant. The sage paused, allowing the man to absorb the scene. The wise king of the neighboring kingdom, noticing his guest's displeasure, calmly said, "Your Majesty, it is only a tiny fly. It will not ruin your meal. Please do not let something so small upset you." The visiting king, however, was not so easily placated. He responded sharply, "I cannot ignore it. It is not just a fly. It is the principle of the matter. Even the smallest disruption can ruin my mood." The wise king of the neighboring kingdom, who had lived long and learned much about the human heart, smiled gently. "Your Majesty," he said, "it is not the fly that disturbed your peace, but your reaction to it. You have the power to control your emotions. It is not the outside world that causes your anger, but your response to it. The choice is yours. You can allow your emotions to control you, or you can learn to master them." The visiting king, although initially taken aback, found the wise king's words stirring something deep inside him. He realized that his anger was not a natural response to the fly, but a result of his own choices. His frustration was within his control. With this newfound understanding, the visiting king thanked his host for the wisdom shared and returned to his kingdom. As time passed, the visiting king began practicing mindfulness and awareness. He learned to pause before reacting to any situation that triggered his anger. Whenever something upset him, he would take a deep breath and consider his options, choosing his response thoughtfully instead of allowing his emotions to dictate his actions. Slowly but surely, the king began to notice that he could remain calm even in situations that would have once made him lose his temper. He became more thoughtful in his decisions and more mindful of the impact of his reactions on those around him. The sage paused again and looked at the troubled man before him. "This story, my friend," the sage said gently, "holds a powerful lesson for all of us. It is not about suppressing your emotions, but rather about understanding them. You have the ability to control how you respond to situations. It is your reactions that shape your experience of the world." The troubled man sat quietly, reflecting on the king's transformation. He could feel the truth of the sage's words resonating deeply within him. But as much as he understood the wisdom of controlling his reactions, he knew it would not be easy. After all, emotions had a way of surfacing unexpectedly, often before one had a chance to think or reflect. The sage, sensing the man's struggle, continued, "There is another story I know, one that may help you further understand the power of managing your emotions. It is about a young man named Luke who faced a similar battle with his own temper." The man listened intently, eager to hear more. "Luke was a passionate young man," the sage said, "and like many of us, he struggled with anger. Whenever something upset him, he would lash out, often saying things he would later regret. His temper led him him to alienate friends and family, causing him much distress. But Luke, like the king, was not content to let his emotions control him forever. One day he realized that his impulsive reactions were causing him more harm than good. His relationships were deteriorating, and his own peace of mind was slipping away. The sage continued, determined to make a change, Luke sought out ways to calm his mind. He turned to meditation and mindfulness, tools that helped him become more aware of his thoughts and feelings. He learned to observe his emotions without immediately acting on them. Whenever he felt anger rising, he would take a deep breath and step back. He learned to pause, to reflect, and to choose his response rather than simply reacting. The man nodded slowly, his mind already beginning to absorb the story. At first, it was incredibly difficult for Luke, the sage said. His emotions were strong, and his instincts to react impulsively were ingrained in him. But over time, as he practiced mindfulness and awareness, Luke found that it became easier to control his reactions. He no longer lashed out in anger, and he was able to communicate more calmly and thoughtfully. His relationships began to improve as he responded to others with patience and understanding. The sage smiled gently. One day, Luke's close friend came to him in need of support. His friend was going through a difficult time and was overwhelmed with emotion. Luke listened carefully, offering words of comfort and compassion. Afterward, his friend said to him, Luke, you always seem so calm. You never get angry or upset. How do you do it? Luke smiled, his eyes full of quiet wisdom. It's not that I never feel anger or frustration, he replied. It's just that I've learned to control my emotions. I don't let them control me anymore. It's a powerful skill that has helped me live more peacefully and strengthened my relationships. The troubled man, deeply moved by the story, looked at the sage. But how can I learn to do the same? He asked. The sage smiled knowingly. Like Luke, you must practice mindfulness. You must observe your emotions without judgment and learn to respond thoughtfully. It will not be easy, but with patience and practice, you can cultivate peace within yourself. You have the power to control your responses, and in doing so, you will transform your life. The troubled man left the sage's dwelling that day with a sense of hope in his heart. He understood that his emotions, although powerful, did not have to control him. Like the wise king and Luke, he too could learn to master his reactions and choose how he responded to the challenges of life. As time passed, the man began practicing mindfulness, pausing before reacting in anger or frustration. He learned to take a step back, breathe, and consider the impact of his words and actions. Slowly, he noticed a shift in himself. He became more patient, more understanding, and more at peace with himself. His relationships improved, and he found that he was able to make wiser decisions. By controlling his reactions, he felt more in control of his life. The moral of the story is clear. We cannot always control the circumstances that come our way, but we can control how we respond to them. By practicing mindfulness and non-reactivity, we can gain mastery over our emotions, create healthier relationships, and experience greater peace in our lives. It takes time and effort, but the rewards are well worth it. As the sage taught, we have the power to shape our own responses, and through this, we shape our lives for the better. If this story has brought you a moment of peace or reflection, we invite you to like this video, subscribe to Canvas of Serenity, and join our tranquil community. Let's continue walking the path of wisdom, mindfulness, and inner harmony together.